Yes, I believe everyone has gotten something to eat. And if not, there's still some more food. And as you continue to, bite on this sumptuous meal, are you enjoying the meal? Yes? You're enjoying the meal? Fantastic. I think this side is enjoying the meal. I don't know about this side. Are you guys enjoying the meal? Kwanza nyinyi ndo mlipewa wa kwanza. Fantastic. Okay. So, before I introduce the next speaker, I'd like to say for all of you who would like the pictures, you can see there's so many pictures being taken. At the entrance there's a QR code where you can scan and you'll get a link to all the pictures. Also, I've been reminded that it's top 40, under 40, yani you are top over, yani in the whole country. So as you see this book, I see the booklet from number 1 to 40. Don't think there's a number 1 and there's a number 40. All of you, are the top. Okay? So to give us the keynote speech, put your hands together for the Chief Executive Officer, the Group Chief Executive Officer and Managing Director, Centum Investment Company, PLC, Mr. James Moria. Hapana tupige makofi kama tumekula. Come on.
Top 40, under 40, good evening. No, I've not heard you. Have you not eaten? Good evening. No, it's a real pleasure for me to be here this evening at this occasion to honor all of you. For me, it feels like yesterday when I sat here in your place as a top 40, under 40 honoree, and in fact, Paul sent me a photo, and it was about 13, 14 years ago. And that's how time flies. It's an honor and privilege to be invited today as a guest, and I want to thank the Nation Media Group for inviting me for this particular occasion. I am joined by my wife, Joan. Joan, please stand up and wave. Joan is a co-founder of Sarova Mayan. So if you're either in that part of the world, please visit. I would also like to recognize those who've made your dreams possible. Sometimes when we get these awards, we forget that we're actually trustees of our teams. Nothing great is achieved working alone. There have been your parents, there have been your mentors, there have been those who've given you this opportunity to be here. And I want to recognize all those unsung heroes who've made your journey this far possible. I also congratulate those who strived to make it. There were 6,000 other people. They were not less meriting than you are. There were 500 where there was a cutoff who did not quite make it to be in this room. But you represent them, and you represent that generation. Stephen asked me what I felt when I was nominated that many years ago. I was nominated in the first top 40 under 40. And for me, I felt a deep sense of duty. Because at the time when I was nominated, in my early 30s, it was very rare to have a chief executive officer of any major company who was less than 45 at that time. When I was CEO of Centum, I was 31 years. And the next CEO of a listed company was probably 50 years. And I remember Gideon Morioki, the chief executive officer of Cobank. I had lunch with him. And he said, James, this appointment is not just for you. You represent your generation. If you do well, you'll open doors for many, many other people. People will realize that young people have what it takes. And that's a sense of responsibility I felt that time. And that's a sense of responsibility and duty you have as honorees, because you have a responsibility to open doors for many, many other people. This is not just about you. It is about all those who are looking up to you. It's all those who are looking up to you because God has blessed you with a gift of leadership, and you've been blessed by this opportunity to be honored. So that's how I felt, and that's how I feel today. I still feel a deep sense of responsibility to lift others, to create opportunity for others. And it's interesting, as I was coming here this evening, somebody called me and I said, look, I'm busy, I'm preparing to attend the top 40 under 40 dinner. They said, no, James, you must be joking. You must be talking about, at least they were gracious enough. They said, you must be attending the top 50 under 50 dinner. But I told them, no, it's the top 40 under 40. I want to congratulate the Nation Media Group for your unwavering commitment towards recognizing exceptional individuals, both men and women, who are builders. When I look at your profiles, whether you are in business, in tech, in sport, in the civil service, I've seen there's even somebody in the judiciary, you represent all facets of our economy and our society. But what is unique and what is common amongst all of you is that you are builders, you are creators, and you are forging forward, and you are forging new paths. And the nation has been at the forefront of recognizing those in our society who are playing that role. And you've done that with the top 40 under 40 men, top 40 under 40 women. Used to have that with 100 SMEs, and many of them went on to be very significant enterprises. And there are those who have argued that these events are self-promoting. It's about individuals. But I disagree with them. And I was thinking about what to speak today, and I wanted to speak on the subject of entrepreneurship and really individuals who build. Because ultimately a country is built by individuals. And you represent that generation of those individuals. And I also wanted to use this opportunity to reflect about what is happening in our country. Because it's not every day that leaders such as yourself get to meet and consider different issues that are happening and really be purveyors of solutions. You know, when we attended school, we were told there are 3 factors of production. If you remember, in fact, I think one of you is a classmate to one of my young CEOs, and asked him, how come you're not on this list? And he said, no, my classmate is on the list. So you're in school more recently. But remember, you're told it's capital, labor, and markets. But you know what is not known is that is a more recent definition of factors of production. This definition arose following the Cold War. And there was a distinction between market-based economies and state-controlled economies. But originally, capitalism had different factors. And the countries that initially got rich were the Netherlands. Then you may not know, Netherlands exported its king to England, so England followed. The capitalists in England left, went to the US, they followed. But the definition, there's an economist called Warner Sombart, and they identified 3 driving forces of capitalism. And the first one, you won't believe it, it is the entrepreneur. The entrepreneur is a human agent who takes the initiative to have something produced or traded. The second one is a modern state, which creates the institutions to enable improvements in production and distribution, and create the vested interest of the entrepreneur to coincide with the vested interest of society at large. That's the role of the modern state. It is to make your interest as an innovator, as an entrepreneur, coincide with the interest of society. And that's where the power of nations flows from. So if you see the US stopping technology from going to China, it's because they understand the power of the state flows from the power of its enterprises. And the third one is the innovation process. This is a process through which people learn and become more productive. Capital, labor, and markets are actually supporting players. They are supporting cast. They are not the main cast. They are what comes to support. And if you look at the story of sub-Saharan Africa, many of our countries did not even get into the age of capitalism. because we focus more on the inputs and forgotten it is the entrepreneur, it is that business person, it is that person sitting at that corner who is driving this economy. I recently attended a breakfast session by the Kenya Revenue Authority, large taxpayers. And my friend Humphrey Watanga stood up and made an interesting remark, which I found remarkable. He said, in Kenya there are slightly over 2,000 large taxpayers, 2,000. But these 2,000 large taxpayers account for 40% of our total tax collection. And the question is, what can we do to enhance the tax base of this country? And I sat there and I was thinking, for me the answer was obvious. How do we move more of these 6,000 people who applied to the top 40 under 40 program to be large enterprises? Because if you can double this number from 2,000 to 4,000, you then resolve our balance of payment issue. And you can see from a practical perspective the role of enterprise. There is the research organization called Gala, and they did a survey, and their survey across the world is that in a population of 1,000 people, there are about 5 people in 1,000 who have the capacity to develop large enterprises. So if you take Kenya with a working age population of about 20 million people, we have the capacity to have 100,000 large enterprises from the 2,000 we have today. And so that's a conversation I was speaking to Stephen and all of us, so that we are not caught up in the negative, but in the positive. What is it that we can do that can move our 2,000 to 100,000? What is it that we can do that can enable all these people who are here to have Kenya as an environment where they can enjoy, thrive, and manifest their talent in the best way possible, so that they can lift others? There was an economist called Moses Abramovich. I don't know whether you've heard of him. Not the soccer coach. Moses Abramovich. And Moses Abramovich studied the US economy between 1870 and 1950. And he was trying to understand what between capital, labor, was the bigger contributor of economic growth in the United States. And what he established and what surprised him is that capital and labor only accounted for 15% of the growth. 85% he couldn't explain. But that 85% was later found out to be the human spirits, the enterprise that exists in that society, and the ability to nurture that entrepreneurial energy. If you look at sub-Saharan Africa, and I have a chart which I will share, and in fact this chart was shared to me by none other than Dr. David Ndii when he was doing some consulting for us in the bank before the elections. And you look at the case of sub-Saharan Africa, capital and labor account for 99% of growth. It means you have inputs. Whatever growth you see is input driven. There is no productivity. If you look at emerging markets and other developing economies, productivity, the human enterprise, accounts for about 50%. And that, in my view, ladies and gentlemen, explains some of the phenomenon you're seeing. When you put inputs in an environment where you don't have productivity, what you see is that on wages you don't have real rise in wages. You can't have real rise in increase in wages because there's no productivity. And if you increase the wages artificially, what you then see is a loss of competitiveness. And when you lose competitiveness, what you see is that your imports exceed your exports. And ultimately you have a weakening currency. If you draw capital in an environment where the productivity is not there, if it's equity, you have very low rates of return, which is what you are reporting, the low rates of return we are seeing. If you draw capital where there's no productivity, you have NPLs in banks. And for governments, you have challenges in paying back that debt. And so the root solution lies in productivity. And the productivity factor is a human factor. And the human factor is the ladies and gentlemen who are represented in this room. And so the question has to be, what can we do to enable these people and all of us here to be more productive so that we can create more opportunities for many other people? I was recently speaking to somebody senior in government, and I was telling them, in my view, the solution, if you have a labor force participation of 20 million people, out of the 20 million people we have, 3 million people pay as you earn, 3.2 million. So there is 17 million people who are not in formal employment. So my question was, what can we do to promote businesses to absorb more of these people into formal employment? How do you widen the tax base? By widening the employment base. And what you may not realize, pay as you earn is larger than corporation tax and VAT combined. So the point I'm making is that, Stephen, you're on the right track. The future of this country, the solution of this country is with these people. And you've picked the right people, because these is people who will solve our solution, our problems. I do not want to dwell too much on the pain, because as entrepreneurs, we are always out looking for opportunities. And so when Stephen asked me, how is the economy? I said, actually, I'm very, very busy, because now it presents a lot of opportunities. And I was telling him, I'm excited by the currency. It was 100 shillings, it's now 150 shillings. If your costs are in Kenya shillings, you have almost a 50% reduction in your cost and a 50% increase in your revenue. So why don't we become exporters? I was challenging the Nation Media Group. Why don't you write more about the export opportunities that exist for Kenyans operating in Kenya? We're on the verge of signing a trade agreement with the US. The Strategic Trade and Investment Partnership Agreement will be signed before the end of this month. We've signed a trade agreement with the European Union. We've signed a trade agreement with the UK. We're about to sign a trade agreement with the UAE. We are one of the 8 countries that are part of the Africa Free Continental Trade Area. That represents a huge opportunity. And if I was you today, back to when I was 30 years, back then we were excited about the opportunities that were present in the domestic economy. Today I'm excited about the opportunities that are presented by being in Kenya, looking at the global economy. And that's why, for example, we've recently launched the Two Rivers International Finance and Innovation Center, which is a special economic zone, which creates a platform for enterprises that are seeking to access export markets, employing our labor. Because the other advantage Africa has, between 2020 and 2050, Africa is the only continent that will increase their labor force. Labor force participation in Africa will be up by 780 million people. All the other regions are losing people. And now you have the benefit of COVID, where people learned that jobs can be done remotely. So jobs can be done digitally. And many of these countries have challenges with immigration. They would rather people work where they are. That presents a whole universe of opportunities. There are very significant geotechnical changes happening at a time when you are young, when you're energetic, when you're vibrant, when you can take those opportunities. So that, for me, excites me. And it's been keeping me busy. I was sharing with them that when I open the newspaper and I see all the stories about the terrible things happening and the challenges, I skip all those pages. And I'm always thinking, where is the opportunity? And that's the mindset we must have as business people. The critical mindset is positivity. Wealth is first created in the mind before it manifests itself in the physical space. And as you progress, you have to resist the temptation of waiting to see it in the physical space. You have to remain faithful to those dreams that you have. Because this society needs you. We need those dreams that you have to manifest themselves. There are also other interesting opportunities that are happening. There's a whole shift towards renewable energy. That's a huge shift. If you think about where wealth has been created over the last 200 years, it has always been when there are major shifts in sources of energy. from coal to fuel, it created a huge shift. That's what created the likes of Rockefeller. The coal was the industrial age. From fuel, we are now going to the electric age. If you think who is the richest person, you're thinking of Elon Musk with the Tesla. The driving force of the economy is energy. And now there's a major shift, if you've been following what has been going on in COP28. Shift away from fossils to renewable energies because of the environmental pressures we are facing. There's a shift towards decarbonization. And guess where most of Africa's renewable resources are? They're in Africa. 40% of renewable energy is in Africa. And a lot of it is in Kenya. If you think about our geothermal resources, if you think about wind, if you think about solar, then think about where Kenya sits. We are sitting next to the port. Think about where most of Africa's resources are. They're in the rest of Africa. These resources pass by Kenya. And now, companies are required to account for their carbon footprint, not just what is called Scope 1, which is the direct emissions, but also Scope 2 and Scope 3, which are emissions in their supply chain. So it's no longer just enough to be the lowest cost producer from an energy perspective. It's important to have clean energy. That presents an opportunity for all of us to process African resources and export them. And today, for the first time, we have market access to many parts of the world. Which are these entrepreneurs who will be seizing these opportunities? We don't need to wait for others to come and see what is obvious to us. And so you're in a market where, and a place where things are happening, and these changes don't necessarily take place in the lifetime of many people. But you're fortunate that you're sitting on the cusp of where major changes are happening. And remember what I told you, wealth is first created in the mind. So ignore what is happening. What is happening can change in a fortnight. If we all collectively see the possibilities and seize these possibilities. So it is perhaps instructive that you are sitting today